So you may be thinking, Siren Isle, who really cares? This is just a recycled BFA map that Blizzard is pushing to stall for time with some gimmicky pirate theme, but based on the PTR and the dataman information, that couldn't be further from the truth. We have discovered questlines, the lore is deep, and it all ties into the World Soul Saga. We discovered the actual new crystal, which seems to be Beldar 2.0, as well as a connection to Azerite, which is super confusing. However, most interestingly, we discover an abandoned Kultiran as well as an ancient Vrykul civilizations that seems to have disappeared overnight. Were these Vrykul the Titan servants, or could Odin have sent his Valeriar for the crystals because, as you may remember, his halls always had a light team, despite the fact that he really was a Titan servant. What is going on? Who were these ancient Vrykul? What is this isle? And what could this crystal possibly be? If you want to get Dragonflight or anything else Warcraft related, Gamigo has some excellent deals that you can check out with my link below. Best of all, you can get software, gift cards, a bunch of games at below market prices. On top of that, you can also use my code DORON to get yet another discount, so make sure to check out my link below and grab some amazing deals at Gamigo. So a lot of people weren't particularly hyped when they announced the new Siren Isle because it is obviously just a recycled map from BFA, it's almost identical, the exact same copy. However, we have some PTR information and it looks like they have actually expanded upon it. It isn't just a scrapped map that they're just propping up for content. Sure, they may be using similar models, but they have tied it really well with Kazakar, and we have discovered some crazy lore from Kultirans to actual Vrykuls all the way to the brand new gigantic crystal, which seems to be Beldar 2.0. So, if you've been following the hints that I've covered on the channel, none of this really came by surprise. A few weeks back, we got a ton of dialogue from Dornogal that said that the goblins had discovered a brand new island with a singing crystal. We've learned that the Earthen are preparing their Griffin expeditions, goblins sent their Zeppelins, and the Arati humans, for the first time ever, built an above-ground air base, which I'll get to in a bit because I think this is a big hint that a lot of people are not talking about. So, about a few weeks back, we've learned about the crystal itself, and I had speculated that this is the upper portion of Beledar, which actually could still be the case, but we have gotten a ton of interesting lore in the past few weeks. First, we've learned what Beledar is from the Archives questline. Long story short, the Titans tell us that Beledar is just a classification of the essence of Azeroth's World Soul, and that who knows how many crystals like these exist all across Azeroth under the ground. What made it really weird though is that we know Azerite is like the blood, we've seen that everywhere from the Legion, but Azerite really does look like calcification because it seems like a natural ore, like something you would discover. However, this Beledar crystal seems to be fully light based, it seems like Naru aligned, and it appears engineered. It really looks like a Naru ship. Around the same time, one of the level designers revealed an internal map where Blizzard is referring to Beledar as a Naru crystal, which kinda contradicts this entire matter. My theory was that since the Naru are born from light crystal and Zalt had told us Naru are the brethren of the void that lost their way, that we are possibly seeing a transformation of this classification. Interestingly enough, we discovered this new crystal on Siren Isle, and while it is also light, like Beledar, it is actually a more natural one, while Beledar has all the Naru-like runes on it. My speculation, based on the current information, is that we are possibly seeing the birth of either a new Naru or a Void God, which is why this transformation is happening all the time, and all of this is coming from this giant classification of Azeroth. However, let's now talk about the isle itself because there is actually really interesting lore. It isn't just some random pirate island to distract us for a month or two with some gimmicky lore. Now, all of this seems to be a part of the overarching storyline. So, immediately what is interesting, because this was an abandoned map from BFA, the Siren Isle was supposed to have a ton of Azerite all over it because, as you may remember, during BFA, Azerite was a big deal. Blizzard then actually reworked this entire thing and changed all this Azerite energy into this pure light energy that Beledar is emanating, but interesting enough, they also kept some blue and light Azerite as well, which I'll get to in a bit. Now, here's the good part. The island is essentially like this ghost town, but it is a place of multiple civilizations that for some reason disappeared. It is one giant mystery. We discovered an ancient Vrykul civilization, and we also discovered that the Vrykul have been experimenting with the crystals as well, and for some reason they just vanished. Now here we could have two paths. Either this was yet another Titan expedition because this is right next door to Kazakar, and as you may obviously remember, the Vrykul are yet another form of Titan servants. Interesting enough, from what we had discovered, the Utten are usually the workers, the diggers, and the Vrykul are mainly the warriors. This is why Odin picked Vrykul for his Valeriar that we had seen back in Legion. The isle is also haunted with a lot of myths and ghost stories, so if the Titans sent them there must be a reason they wanted the warriors here and not the workers. On the other hand, we have two other possibilities. It could just be bandit Vrykul raiders that landed on this island randomly. I mean, we know the Vrykul are essentially like the Warcraft Vikings and they're known to sail across Azeroth. However, another interesting possibility is that this could literally be Odin's Valeriar, and as you may know, Odin is really relevant because we're constantly discovering him in all these documents. Do you find it was so weird that his Sky Vrykul, like his Titan Vrykul, had all this light team energy with them, despite the fact that they're literally Titan servants, and as you may know, the Titans don't wield the light, or as far as we know. We found no connection with Tanaro and Odin, yet they have this strong Paladin light team. Odin, as the Prime Designate, probably was the one that even created the entire Kazakar expedition. He obviously knew about these crystals, so he was trying to take them to his realm. Could this be the reason why all these Vrykul disappeared and why they were experimenting here? Like, this could have been an expedition that Odin sent, they took what they needed and they just returned back. However, it gets even more interesting as we have a recent infusion of Kultirans that also mysteriously disappeared. So according to the Kultiran journals we found, this is a place of legends, myths, ghost stories, and very nasty storms. We've also learned from the quests that the Kultirans apparently didn't hear the singing crystals, but we did actually discover their mining camps. We also know for a fact that they were mining Azerite here in recent history. Keep in mind, Azerite, not the Beledar type crystals, but then they also literally seem to have completely vanished overnight. Could they have dug a bit too deep, hit the crystal, and something cataclysmic happened? I feel like they're doing the same thing with the goblins. They're foreshadowing as well. There has been a big theory that goblins have also dug too deep back in Kazan. That is what actually caused the volcano to explode. It wasn't just Deathwing. Now, to explain the storm itself that is apparently haunting this isle, we found some behind the scenes artwork of the creation of Beledar, and we've seen some concepts of the crystal Beledar gathering clouds over it and causing bad weather. I feel like this is what is happening with this crystal as well. However, what do we actually know about this Siren Isle crystal, and what even is this Siren Isle? So we have some dialogues from the Arati humans that had arrived with their ship. Also, by the way, this is the first time we had seen the Arati using their super advanced light ships outside of the cave and above the ground, and I feel like we're one step closer to discovering where their mainland empire is and who this crazy light emperor is as well, and whether he is even crazy. The Arati say that the singing crystal is remarkably just like Beledar and that they should treat it with the exact same reverence. Here's the thing, we actually do discover a lot about this crystal through the PTR, so I don't really even need to go crazy in speculation here. Originally, it appears this crystal is much smaller and there is only a tiny bit that we see above. However, then we discover that a secondary part of this crystal is literally pushing the ground on a completely different side of the island inside of a cave, and then based on earthen examination we discover that the crystal is far beneath the surface and that it is literally stretching for miles below. So we're only seeing the tip of the crystal, the very tip. However, here we can find a ton of Vrykul runes, so we know they were doing something with these crystals, with this energy. Now, as I previously stated, it is possible that we're just witnessing the upper portion of Beledar because it says it goes miles down and Beledar is literally going miles down. It would make sense that the other side could be on an island right off the shore of Kazakar. The only reason why I'm not 100% certain this is the case, and I've previously speculated this is because new Titan questlines did imply that multiple crystal exists, so it is entirely possible that this is a completely different crystal. However, a good question here that I really can't seem to figure out is what is possibly going on with Azerite and this crystal light. This really just seems like a completely massive mystery that I just can't figure out. One thing I noticed is that the Titans do seem to wield this yellow magic that appears similar to the light, as you can see with the Titan prisons and the Primal Incarnate prisons and their structure. They always have this type of energy. You can even see this in Ulduar. However, that isn't really the light, and we know the priests and paladins of the Irati Empire are using actual holy light from Beledar. Could it be possible that Azerite, the blue light, is an anomaly that is actually Azeroth's world soul? I feel like this ties into the mix of magics that Blizzard recently started implementing. You might have seen, for example, the Shadow Flame from Dragonflight. It was a mix of fire and void magic. Here in The War Within, we got the Sacred Flame, which is a mix of fire and the light, essentially an elemental mix with the light. Could Azerite be the mix of Azeroth's world essence and the Titan Order magic, which appears like the light? Do you notice that all the World Soul stuff is always blue and yellow? It always has this Azerite hue. As I stated many times, it does appear the Titans are trying to convert Azeroth, so could this Azerite be a mix of Azeroth's natural neutral blood and the Titan corruption? I feel like if the Void corruption came, it would be purple and the mix of Azeroth's blood. Still, it does seem like Blizzard is legit building a mystery here with this crystal, and also this is a good sign that we can't easily predict things. It means like they're actually working with a story in mind, not just winging it from patch to patch with a ton of dead ends, so this is actually good. Now, while on first glance the Siren Island might appear like some gimmicky pirate filler island, there is actually a lot of lore that is tying into not just 11.1, but also the entire World Soul saga. Thank you for watching. Check out the Azeroth Action Creator Custom Flash by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on Perron and Slavic mythology by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time!